And we are live. How you doing, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it with our latest edition of a breaking news live show here on WardyNYM, your #1 stop for all things Mets news, rumors, post-game shows, just interactive discussions and everything in between, player breakdowns, profiles, and so much more. And that's why you guys have done such an amazing job as supporters here on the channel over the years. And today we're going to be breaking down the latest addition to the Mets bullpen, most likely their last bullpen edition of the 2023-2024 offseason, if you want to label it that. I don't know. It's hard to label. I don't know, because for me, as you get into the end of the 2023 season, you have those multiple months, and then you also have the 2024 aspect. So actually, this is a good, warm-up, a starter for you guys watching the live show and people on replay. How do you label this offseason? Do you label it just by 1 year, or do you kind of do half of one, half of the other? I'm really curious where you guys stand on that. But more than anything, I'm really curious how you guys feel about the latest addition, as the Mets look like they are about to sign Jake Diekman, I'd imagine on a 1 or at absolute most a 2-year deal, meaning probably a second-year option. But a gut tells me it's probably a 1-year deal. If I had to imagine in a similar range to Adam Ottavino that the Mets signed, I can't imagine it would be much bigger than that. And Diekman was the best lefty available on the market after Wandy Peralta signed that 4-year contract with the San Diego Padres, which I have plenty to say about that in its own right. But the Mets get their lefty for their bullpen to pair alongside Brooks Raley, and now they head into the 2024 season hoping to have a competitive club. Now, obviously, I hope this team does more moves. That's probably wishful thinking at this point right now from everything we're seeing, all the indications, but nothing is set in stone yet. But what does look set in stone again is this bullpen. So in today's live show, I'll be breaking down everything you guys need to know about Jake Diekman. Who exactly is this man? And ultimately, if we find out the contract details in the live show, then of course we'll break them down as such. All I ask is that if you guys are watching and are following along on Twitter and you see the contract details come out and say I didn't let you know ahead of time, please make sure to relay in the live chat. It'd be greatly appreciated. That way we can discuss it then should we find out. But it looks like the deal is in fact going to happen. Someone said to check Pat Regazzo, so I'll do exactly that. And again, I appreciate everyone for chopping in live on a replay to the breaking news. The Mets look like they have rounded out their rotation here with Jake Diekman, who I have plenty, not rotation, bullpen rather, who I have plenty to say about. This is what Pat Regazzo just tweeted. My 2 cents on the Mets: they are unlikely to sign DH. They will continue improving the bullpen. They add another bat. It'll be a Gio Urshela type to provide insurance at third base for Beatty, which I believe is essential. I 100% understand where Pat's coming from. That's why in the video we just did on the channel the other day, I had both Gio Urshela and Donovan Solano in that discussion as guys that make more sense than, say, a standalone DH option where you're taking all Mark Vientos' at-bats away. That's not the case if you acquire any of those 2 players that I just mentioned. And again, highly implore you all to check out that video after watching this live show in case you haven't already. But let's get into this sign. First of all, by a show of hands, everyone watching live on a replay, who actually knows who Jake Diekman is? Now, I've talked about Diekman this offseason. I didn't have him in my reliever target video. Shame on me. Of course, it's the one guy that I don't have. However, I've known about Jake Diekman for quite a while now. And of course, if you guys are fans of Draftneck Mark, a good friend of mine, he has been a heavy advocate of Jake Diekman for a number of years. And now the Mets finally find themselves landing the veteran southpaw. And there's a lot of interesting traits here with Diekman on why he can be a very productive reliever for the Mets. And also you can get into the cons, which is quite literally just that man's walk rate. It is horrendous. Everything else about Jake Diekman is honestly pretty damn good, to the point that you should have a level of excitement as a Mets fan. And I'm going to get into also why I understood why the Mets did not land a Wandy Peralta per se. And it really goes in hand with what I just already emphasized with you all. It's a 4-year contract, 3 opt-outs. So basically, as long as Wandy continues to perform to his liking, like San Diego, he will opt in every year. If, say, he performs really bad and knows that his market value isn't great, he'll opt back in. If he supersedes his current production and, as say, has a big 2024, then he may opt out right away after his first season, if he does have an opt-out after the first year. I'm not entirely sure. I just know he has 3 on that 4-year deal. Committing 4 years still to a reliever is never a true ideal thing with how much they can be Jekyll and Hyde and roller coaster. That's certainly not the David Stearns philosophy ever. I mean, other than the Edwin Diaz type pitcher, there are very few relievers that you'll see, especially under this new regime with Stearns, fully commit to a guy to the lengths of a 4-year contract for said relief pitching. So Wandy goes to San Diego. Again, a great AAV, but multiple years on that deal. And now the Mets are going to be inking again, I'd imagine, assumably right now, around a 1-year deal, similar range to Adam Ottavino. Again, if I'm just putting 2 and 2 together at the moment. You guys are cracking me up in the chat a little bit. I do love it. But let's talk now about this. Let's see. If I tell someone I'm picking them up at 12, I pick them up at 12. Bob, I understand, Bob, but you have to understand, I'm also a one-man show at the moment, and when I didn't have any prep work for a signing, my first goal is to make sure the stream is up for you all to know, and then my goal is to be there as soon to that time as possible. I was, between 5 and 10 minutes late? I apologize for that. But again, please don't get any more bothered than you already are, because unfortunately that is something that's going to happen. It always happens, not only for myself, but many other streamers when we're getting set up. That's just how it is. But now I'm going to deep dive what you guys need to know about Jake Diekman, because that's the important thing, right? You look at the stat line down below. This past season, Diekman splitting time with the Chicago White Sox and the Tampa Bay Rays, and he was an absolute killer with the Rays, and he was horrendous with the White Sox. It tells you two things: a Southside club that was in disarray, and a Rays team that obviously knows how to use relievers, especially really interesting, crafty ones like Diekman here. A 3.34 ERA, a 3.33 expected ERA, a 4.58 SIRA. Don't love that. But again, expected numbers with relievers can be wishy-washy because they really do vary year to year. A 1.32 whip and a 3.75 FIP. So the pros and the cons about Jake Diekman. Let's get into the pros. Jake Diekman is one of the best relievers in baseball in inducing soft outs. I mean, soft ground ball outs, that is very much up his alley. He is fantastic in inducing ground ball outs. Hard hit percentage is very low. We're going to go through his numbers in Baseball Savant. He touches 95, 96, 97, 98 on the gun. Has a sweeping slider in that arsenal, which as a lefty is very impressive. We see the sweeper that has recently been worked on with Sean Manaea. That will be coming out of both the Mets rotation and bullpen most likely this year. And then you also have someone like Diekman here who brings different elements than what someone like Brooks Raley gives you. Brooks Raley, again, is not known for the overwhelming life on the he's not known for the overwhelming life on the fastball, but he is known for those off-speed and breaking pitches. Diekman, similar to Wandy Peralta, brings us a nice element as a southpaw that touches high 90s on the gun consistently, and also has a disgusting sweeping slider, the changeup, the sinker, and the cutter. So when we look at his usage here right now, what has been doing well for him and what has been not, the four-seam fastball this past season for Diekman, 175 expected batting average, a 175 opponent batting average, and a 228 slug. With a sweeper, a 161 opponent batting average, and a 290 slug. Changeup, a 189 batting average, and a 297 slug. The sinker, which he only threw 62 times last season, a 313 average and a 500 slug. So clearly he didn't throw that pitch much because he was not having much success, was getting barreled hard with that singular pitch. The cutter that he threw 36 times, literally 0 batting average on. So Diekman's absolutely disgusting. It's all about commanding that strike zone. For the people that don't love Blake Snell because of his walk rate, think of Blake Snell in a reliever format, and that's essentially what you have here in Jake Diekman. Another guy that's a southpaw that can truly be dominant out there in many ways, in high leverage situations especially, but then you also have times where he's truly walking everyone and their mother and their sister and their brother and their father. Like, it just does not stop with the walks. Again, the guy had around 6 walk per 9 this past season to over 10 K per 9. Throughout his career, he's over an 11 K per 9 to right around a 5.27 walks per 9. So, unfortunately, the difference between Jake Diekman and Wandy Peralta is that Wandy Peralta's 2023 peripherals had him with a 5 walks per 9, right? That's an anomaly for Wandy Peralta's career, however, when you look at his previous 5 years in the league. Usually averages around 3, 3.5, tops 4. You have Diekman. Diekman consistently averages between 5 and 6 walks per 9 every single season in Major League Baseball for at least the past 6-7 years he's been in the league. So Diekman understands that while his walk rate will continue to be an issue, he knows his arsenal really well at this point in his career as a 37-year-old. So even though that, yes, he's going to be very frustrating at times. You're going to be head-scratching saying, oh my God, here this guy comes. He's going to walk everyone and their mother. Then he's going to go on to somehow, some way induce that soft ground ball for a key double play to end the inning. So again, obviously he's not going to have success every single time he's out there doing that, but Diekman is one of these craftier southpaws that, especially under someone like Stearns here, makes a lot of sense. Why, you might ask? This is a Jake Diekman that is known for two key things. One, overwhelming life on the fastball as a lefty, and two, the sweeping slider as a lefty. What is one heavy point of emphasis that David Stearns has had this offseason when acquiring relievers? More often than not, it has been life on the fastball, because the Mets were a bottom feeder in Major League Baseball among all leagues bullpens and throwing at least in the high 90s to 100. I mean, the Mets did it never because Edwin Diaz wasn't in this bullpen. They had no other flamethrowers. Now they have multiple, including guys like Jorge Lopez that they picked up earlier this offseason that are going to help in that regard. But then you look at all these flyers the Mets made with all these spring training invites on, non-roster invites, if you will. Nothing's guaranteed. Something a lot of these relievers, if not all, have in common is that they have a nasty sweeping slider, just a nasty slider in general with plenty of horizontal movement. Now you bring in someone like Diekman here, and he continues to fill that philosophy. Not only is someone that has overwhelming life in his fastball, but again, can induce a lot of soft contact and doesn't get barreled nearly as much as you may think. Let's look at the numbers here for Jake Diekman, and then you can truly understand why. And everyone first chiming in live and on replay, we're breaking down the latest news that Jake Diekman looks like he is signing with the New York Metropolitans. We're waiting on the official word, but everyone's, it's unofficially official. We're just awaiting word on what the exact terms of the contract are. Regardless on if we find them out after the live show happens, it really is not going to make or break anything here. It's going to be probably similar range to Adam Ottavino there on a one-year deal, potentially with a second-year option at absolute most, if I had to assume at this point in time. But looking through Baseball Savant, any hope for Stanek? Thank you for the support as always, Dave. I know I got to make sure to check that out as well regarding the P.O. Box, so thank you as well for that, my man. Any hope on Stanek? I would not get my hopes up on Stanek at this point. I'd say that is now water under the bridge. It's not going to happen. The Mets bullpen looks like it is rounded out now. I would be surprised if they sign yet another major league reliever. But again, your guess is as good as mine. I'm sure we'll find out from Andy Martino in mere hours, stating that with the acquisition of Jake Diekman, the Mets are now officially done adding to their bullpen for the 2024 season. That's like to a T what I'm expecting to hear. But going back into Baseball Savant, appreciate everyone first chiming in, guys. It does mean a lot. 60th percentile in pitching run value, 65th percentile in fastball run value, 45th percentile in breaking run value, and 71st percentile in off-speed run value. Expected ERA, 82nd percentile, 94th percentile in expected batting average. Again, this guy did not give up any hard contact whatsoever last season. That's very impressive. Diekman with 75th percentile in fastball velo, which is impressive for not only his age, but as a southpaw reliever. 98th percentile in average exit velocity. Opponent batters are averaging right around 85 miles per hour when hitting Diekman. Chase percentage, 4th percentile. So funny enough, guys aren't chasing on Diekman's pitches much, but they are not barreling him hard whatsoever. Whip percentage, just above average, literally at 51st percentile. K percentage, 74th percentile. Walk percentage, 1 percentile, because again, the guy literally walks literally everyone. 88th percentile in barrel percentage. 99th percentile in hard hit percentage. Guys, there is no one that is doing a better job on avoiding hard hit contact than Jake Diekman in Major League Baseball among relievers. He is that good. He's literally elite in the top class out of everyone. 72nd percentile in ground ball percentage, which is very good too, and just above league average at 51st percentile in his extension with his arm. And just a lot of impressive things about Diekman that stand out to me, especially when you look at his career. Again, it has been kind of up and down for sure. And also shout out to my great friends at BetUS for being a great sponsor on the channel, but a little bit about them more later in the show here. As we look at Diekman's numbers this past season, had just over a 2-year ERA during his time with the Tampa Bay Rays, which consisted of 45 innings. When he was with Southside, basically an 8 ERA. An 8 ERA in 11 innings. So he didn't do well in Chicago. That's completely fine. A lot of guys tend to not do well when they're in Chicago. Then with Tampa, again, kills it. In 2022, we look at his numbers as well. Had himself a interesting numbers in 2022. A 4.99 ERA. A 4.23 ERA with Boston, a 6.52 with Chicago. So clearly he was just never meant to be a Chicago White Sox, because in the 2022 and then going into the 2023 season until he was dealt, he was horrendous with the White Sox for the most part. But, in 2022 then we see, we talked about that with 2021 with the Oakland A's, a 3.86 ERA. In 2020, very solid numbers in a limited sample size, of course. 2019, just over a 4 ERA. So this is a guy that, again, has been very fluctuating between 3.5 to a 4+ ERA in his career. And of course, that command is going to be a very important thing about Diekman. But the same way that command is something that is so known in his game, like Blake Snell, is the same way that I actually have a level of confidence that Diekman is going to be able to overcome the hurdles that come with his type of pitching and play style, really. Again, this is a guy that doesn't have extreme extension, but has overwhelming velo, has a sweeping slider, has some nice off-speed pitches in there too. Again, he did not give up any hard contact whatsoever last season, and now he's coming into a Mets bullpen where, if you look at the current construction, it really consists of these 5 guys. This is the head of the Mets bullpen currently. Edwin Diaz, Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, Jake Diekman, Jorge Lopez, and Drew Smith. Now, outside of Drew, now this might be funny, and maybe this is a hot take on my end. Personally, I have a decent amount more faith in Jorge Lopez this season in the bullpen than I do someone like Drew Smith. And the reason why is because we saw Jorge Lopez. We saw it even last year, regardless of the horrendous season he had statistically. If you see the stuff with Lopez, it's all there. We saw it in 2022 in his all-star year with Baltimore. We know he has it. It's just about to what degree, how consistently can he have it? Can he be in the right command of his arsenal to make sure that he's not slipping on his pitches and tipping in any which way? That's going to be a key factor for Lopez. But when you look at this bullpen construction, it honestly was looking like it was going to be a lot worse for a little bit. Of course, would I have liked if the Mets acquired some of the guys that I've advocated for this offseason, like a Matt Moore, a Brent Suter, those guys? Of course, absolutely. But if there's one thing that I do have a lot of confidence in, when evaluating David Stearns as the new president of the Mets, it's plenty of things, but more than anything, it is bullpen construction, and it is his ability to get the best out of the pitchers that he currently has. So that has been a strong suit, a focal point of David Stearns during his time in Milwaukee, and to a little bit of a lesser extent there as assistant GM with the Houston Astros. And I fully expect him to continue to implement his philosophy, and that's exactly what he's doing here in these acquisitions. And I truly think that we're going to look down and say, that Wandy Peralta contract, it still may age well because the AAV is really nice, but a 4-year commitment for a reliever always has chances to not end well. 2, we also have to realize how much interest did he have coming here. And 3, Wandy Peralta is only the 3rd or 4th reliever in a number of years to get a 4-year contract, especially. It is not a common thing that happens whatsoever. It seems like the Padres doing their best Padres impression, because this is what they do, and they struggle that they don't know if they can fully... if they struggle with trying to land someone that wants to go elsewhere, one thing that San Diego has been a heavy proponent of doing in recent years, especially up until the passing of, unfortunately, Peter Seidler, is the ability to make contracts instead of a certain term, pretty damn long term. To a high magnitude, we've seen it with Tatis, we've seen it with Manny. To a ridiculous magnitude, we've seen it with guys to a certain extent, whether it's Jake Cronenworth, and of course at the top of the list, someone being in Xander Bogaerts. But now we look at the reliever front, and we're doing it similarly here with Wandy Peralta. So if any team's going to shell out a 4 or 5 year contract for a reliever that is not like a, Edwin Diaz, a Josh Hader level, it's not shocking that is a team like the San Diego Padres, in my opinion. Enrique, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that with the $10 holla. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Sounds like a good move to me. I think so too, Bob. I think that overall this is a nice pickup for the Mets. Again, nothing overwhelming, nothing too sexy. I'm going to tell you guys right now, as I said before, do not be shocked if this is someone who certainly frustrates you. I just hope that in the case of Diekman, that we get more of Diekman that we saw last year. It might be wishful thinking. We all know how relievers are. A lot of them are very fickle. They're Jekyll and Hyde. They'll have an awesome, right around a 3 or sub-3 ERA season. Then the next year, they'll jump to a 4.5, 5. Then the following year after that, they'll go back down to actually a 2.5. Then they'll jump to a 3.76. There isn't too much consistency, but at least we know with Diekman what we have. We know what Jake Diekman is at this point in his career. The guy's been in the league since 2012. He's a journeyman at this point, right? He's been around. He's been on a lot of teams. And overall, he's had quite a bit of success. So I know that especially my man in Draft Deck Mark is definitely going to be hyping him up, rightfully so, because this is a guy he's advocated for. Personally, one of the biggest reasons why I have not went out of my way to be an advocate of Jake Diekman in previous content is truly just because of that walk rate. Not so much on the concern I have with it should he come to the Mets, but more so dealing with it from the fan perspective and watching it. Because as someone that has watched multiple Blake Snell starts and has seen him get out of his own messes, don't get me wrong, it's fun to see guys get out of their own mess to get out of their own jams, but it's not fun to see kind of the cardiac implementation it has on us Mets fans because they put themselves in these cardiac moments where it's like, Jake, it's the 7th inning, bro. We got to get these 2 outs, and you just walk the first 2 batters you saw. Like, it's so frustrating, you know? Like, that is what I'm ruining. That is what I'm not looking forward to with Jake Diekman. But what I am looking forward to with Jake Diekman is his ability, his effectiveness to get these outs in every which way he does. He's fantastic on the ground ball ability. He's fantastic on inducing soft fly ball outs, pop outs, you know, that you'll even see in some of these highlights potentially that I'm showing you right now. And again, he strikeouts, he does K guys at a solid clip. We look at past season, again, a 10.16 K per 9. The year prior, a 12.33 K per 9. The year before that, a 12.3. The year before that, a 13. So while he did take a step back in his K per 9 by a whole 2.5 this past season, he actually had a more effective year this past year than what he had his past 2 seasons in Major League Baseball. So it tells you that even if say the K percentage, even if it isn't as overwhelming as it was in previous years, it doesn't necessarily mean that's not going to amount to the same, if not more success than what he's had to this point. So overall, Jake Diekman, I gotta say, I really do like this pickup for the most part for understanding David Stearns' construction of the bullpen. Again, if we put the walk rate aside and we put that frustration aside, there are very little criticisms to have with a pickup like this. This is really only upside and someone that can come in and eat high leverage situations for you, lefty. And honestly, the biggest thing that I'm excited about regarding this is how he pairs with Brooks Raley. Finally, this Mets bullpen has 2 southpaws where they're going to be crafty and they're going to be unique in getting their outs. Raley and Diekman, especially in nights where you have to use both of them, hopefully not too often, because the appeal with having 2 lefty relievers is that, oh, Brooks Raley we can use tonight, and Diekman we're going to use tomorrow. That's kind of the point, because Brooks Raley was utilized kind of a decent amount, if my memory serves me correct, on back-to-back days last season, and while he still had success, there were also some of those outings where Raley wasn't charged, but he didn't even get an out. You know what I mean? So, like, he hasn't had a perfect outing every single time out there. Naturally, is the case for every reliever in Major League Baseball. But the point stands, by having these different implementations of these 2 southpaws and their arsenals and their effectiveness, I think that's going to amount to great success for this bullpen. And another thing, too, if the Mets are, say, selling by the trade deadline, not that I wish that they are, I hope that they, of course, are buying and are very much in a playoff spot or close to, but if the Mets do commit to be full-time sellers by this year's trade deadline again, add Jake Diekman to the list as another trade chip the Mets can utilize should they wish, because of course this will be a short-term contract. That's another thing to keep in mind too. Now that I'm talking about it, I just popped in my mind. Wandy Peralta on a 4-year contract, the AAV is awesome, and the opt-outs make sense, but that also can be a lack of appealing to someone that maybe is looking for short-term relief help by the deadline and doesn't want to consider a 3-4-year commitment. That would also be the case with Wandy for a Padres team where we don't know where they're going to be looking by the time we get to the deadline. They could be in a similar boat to the Mets where they're really teetering and they're trying to, you know, borderline if they're a playoff team or not. They could be well above the Mets. They could be behind. So apologies for the Padres talk. It's only because of the signing for Wandy and just kind of comparing and contrasting why that happened. Also understanding it takes 2 to tango. This is a San Diego that is not only a better club on paper right now, but is also a more appealing destination than Queens. Night and day difference as someone who had the privilege to be in San Diego for the first time last year. Probably 3 to 4. Yeah, I'm imagining it's probably somewhere in that range. And for those that are wondering how to pronounce his name, again, it's Jake Diekman. Jake Diekman. Not Jake Dutt. I'm not even going to say it. Not even going to say it. Jake Diekman is my understanding. US, what's with the periods? What's the attention about, brother? What do you want? What's going on in the chat? Ricardo, thank you for the donation. I appreciate that greatly, my friend. Ricardo says, Wardy, any hope for another starter like a Vince Velasquez or Herman and a cheaper DH option like Brandon Belt or Carlos Santana? Here's the thing. I think until we hear otherwise, it appears the Mets might be done with adding to their rotation. We'll find out, but it appears that them kicking tires on a trade is kind of hoping that, again, guys fall in their lap a little bit on price points. I don't see why the Mets would go out and acquire another kind of low, mid-level starter when they already have those and they already have a good amount of depth on that front. Like that, even if the Mets endure injuries right now, they have a solid amount of depth where then you would have Lucchesi, McGill, Buto, these guys come into play. I don't really see them adding another starter. I think they're done. The only way I see them adding another starter is if they add a bona fide top 3 guy in their rotation, which again, you're likely going to have to give up assets for because outside of Jordan Montgomery, there's really no one else available in the free agent market. And Monty's the interesting one. I mean, Monty's the fascinating one where it's like, is there somehow some way the Mets could get involved there? I'm not getting my hopes up. Furthermore, I don't think the Mets are going to add a DH bat in the set. If the Mets add a bat at this rate, and it's not a Jorge Soler or JD Martinez, I don't foresee them adding a DH caliber bat whatsoever. I think what they're going to do, and this kind of relays what Pat Ragazzo tweeted earlier today, great friend of mine on the beat for the Mets through with Fan Nation, an affiliate with Sports Illustrated, that the Mets would acquire a Gio Urshela or maybe a Donovan Solano that I suggested just a couple days ago. Why? Because these are guys that are high contact, high OBP hitters that can be utilized in various ways in the Mets infield should injuries and inconsistencies occur. And they're both veterans that, again, can be a helping hand for someone like Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos. And it does not limit Mark Vientos' ability to still get everyday reps at the DH position. So the Mets can still add a bat, and I have a feeling they're still going to add a bat, but I do not foresee it to be this sexy, the big name that we, of course, want in a Soler or JD Martinez. Having said that, though, this market is very fickle right now. It's really interesting. The Boston Red Sox are the team where I'm wondering what are they going to do, because if the Red Sox really do not spend much and maybe just bring back, I don't know, an Adam Duvall, for example, what happens to JD Martinez or Jorge Soler at that point? Their markets really aren't strong right now, and you have to wonder where these guys would go if they do, in fact, say neither of them go to Boston. So I think the ball's in the Mets' court a little bit to really take advantage of this market at the moment, but it appears that there's just a reluctancy to do so at these current price points, because let's also keep in mind every single signing the Mets do, folks, is 110% taxed right around there. So the Mets sign Diekman to say, I don't know, 1 year, maybe $4.5 million, hypothetical, right? That's really around double and then some by the Mets signing Diekman. So that's where the stubbornness comes in with the spending. It's because the Mets are already taxed up the wazoo as is. Unfortunately, it's because of the ramifications from their spending in recent years. But the good thing is that once this season concludes, a lot of money comes off the books. And that's exactly why the whole philosophy has been, we're going to do what we can to be a competitive club to push for playoffs in 2024. And then we're really going to be able to not only dabble, but go out and get certain big fish that we weren't able to get this past year, albeit it was a pretty a top-loaded market. It's a deep one next year that's headlined by a lot of pitching. The Mets are salivating at the mouth to get involved there, and they certainly will. Dave, thank you so much for the donation. Tyler, get on the phone and tell Steve to sign Soler. Unfortunately, I don't have Steve's contact to that ability. I do know people that Steve works with, but I don't have his contacts. So unfortunately, we're not going to get lucky on that front. But good thinking rather there from Dave. And for those that are just chiming in again, guys, we're breaking down the latest news. The Mets appear to be signing Jake Diekman, likely on a 1 or tops 2-year contract. We await contract details, but the beauty about signings like this later in the offseason is the actual terms of the contract mean very little unless we have a Wandy Peralta situation. And then we find out that the Mets signed Jake Diekman to a 4-year deal with 3 opt-outs. I would just sit here like, are you effing kidding me? What are we doing here? That makes literally zero sense whatsoever. But assuming that doesn't happen, it's okay if you guys find out about the details after the live show is done here. We do have some awesome donations I want to get into shortly, but before I do that, I do have to let you guys all know about today's video sponsor and our great friends on the channel, that being in BetUS. For those that don't know BetUS, guys, again, they are safe, secure, and reliable, and they always have you covered. And right now, BetUS, guys, they're doing something very, very special here. Bear with me 1 second, everybody, so that way I can make sure that this thing gets over here, and that way we are all set up. So give me 1 second, guys. So BetUS, especially right now with the Super Bowl right around the corner, I have to let you guys know with Super Bowl 58 just next weekend, if you want some inside info and picks advice from award-winning sports bettors before the big game, go over to BetUS Picks and Predictions channel on YouTube or hit the link in the description. They have you covered. So again, guys, a little bit different with the Super Bowl right around the corner. I highly implore you all to please check out BetUS's NFL Picks and Predictions channel here on YouTube. I have it linked right down below in the description of the live show. It is that easy. Check them out today. And again, if you want to get in on Super Bowl action in just a weekend from now, if you want to get in on regular NHL season, regular NBA season, if you're a Knicks fan, especially like me, you're feeling pretty good at the moment, or whatever your sports fandom and betting desires, check out BetUS today. They're safe, secure, and reliable. And you could click the link in the description too. That gives you a 125% boost with your first deposit, which means if you deposit $100, you automatically get $225 to work with. Is that easy? And again, shout out once more to BetUS for being a great sponsor on the channel. Apologies, I always do that. That's my bad. No one else is bad but my own. Fernando Rodriguez with the $20. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Just sending my appreciation for all your great work, Fernando. Thank you so much, my friend. That is greatly appreciated. Just by that pick alone, I don't know if you're a politician. I just don't know if you're just a handsome fella. All I know, Fernando, is that I greatly appreciate the donation and your support. So thank you kindly for that, my friend, and I wish you well. Let's get some hype in the chat for Fernando, my man Dave as well, with the wishful thinking there. Get on the phone and tell Steve to sign Soler. John, great member of 6 months, OG on the channel, says, never a bad thing to have two lefties. Never a bad thing at all. And honestly, I love the fact that the Mets did not go the Aaron Loop reunion route here. Nothing personal against Aaron Loop. I'm sure maybe he would have success back in Queens, but this isn't 2021 anymore. It's been 3 years. The guy has been horrendous since then, pretty much. And I know that relievers can be a toss-up. So again, it's one of those things where even if you signed a guy that had a bad year last year, it only means so much. The same way that I really like the signing of Jorge Lopez, for example, for the Mets, just as an example, right? But I really like the fact that the Mets decided to not go the, the heartfelt fan route and went, I think, the most realistic and logical route after losing out on Wandy Peralta. Diekman, from everything that I saw, was my favorite southpaw available among the free agent relievers still left once Wandy signed, and now the Mets signed the second best option, in my opinion. So you can't go wrong there. And furthermore, what helps make someone like Jake Diekman stand out a lot in these really interesting situations, again, is that ground ball percentage. You think of elite ground ball rate. We've seen with Brooks Raley too. And actually, guys, let's do a little side by side. So we talked a bit here about Jake Diekman, and just to give you guys an idea, so Diekman, again, for those that are just chiming in or watching a replay, Diekman has the fastball sitting between 95, touching all the way to 98, 99. The sweeping slider, which he has plenty success with, especially not only lefty on lefty down away, but down and in on those righty batters. Very effective. Changeup, we're looking at right around, solid usage and not even 15% of his arsenal. Sinker and cutter round out his arsenal. So I want to look at Brooks Raley's numbers and arsenal in comparison, but actually before I do that, I'm actually going to take a moment and look at the splits of Jake Diekman this past season just to see how he fared with lefties versus righties, because as we know, just because you are, say, a lefty reliever doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have great success against lefty batters. Or on the flip hand, just because you're a righty reliever doesn't mean you're going to be bad against lefties. David Robertson, who has now signed that 1 year, $11 million deal, which I do think is an overpay. As much as I like David Robertson, I wish him well in Texas. I think that's an awesome fit for him, knowing the type of person D-Rob is. I mean, I think he's going to bode real nicely there in Texas with the Rangers. But D-Rob, what a lot of people have known about him throughout his career is his effectiveness against lefty batters. He's been very good in doing so. Now, Diekman is an interesting one because as we look at his splits here, lefties versus righties, here we go. Holy guacamole, I think I'm in love. Actually, I'm not even going to lie, guys. I think I'm in love. If you want to know why I'm saying this, Jake Diekman, in 2023 at least, was a better pitcher against righties than lefties. That is what I love to see. Why, you might ask? There's nothing better than having a southpaw that has a sweeping slider, especially, that can consistently get righty batters out. So you're telling me if we throw Jake Diekman out there when he's dealing with Matt Olson, but then he still needs to deal with obviously guys like Raley, etc., that he could still get those hopefully effective outs. Hopefully knock on wood, we're not clipping this months later when he gets taken deep by all those batters inevitably. But still, against lefty batters, Jake Diekman last season, opponent batting average, a 229 average, and a 313 slug for a 663 OPS. Against righty batters, it gets even better, folks. A 151 opponent batting average and a minuscule 524 opponent OPS. That is damn good. Sign me up. Jake Diekman, I'm happy to have you. I'm liking this pickup more and more. And truthfully, I think if I just pushed the walk rate aside more ahead of time, I would have been more in favor of Diekman before. And I probably would have had him in a previous content that I've done. But truthfully, there are a lot of really good relievers out there in this year's market. Still out there. I would love a Stanek. I would love a Maton, but I would be surprised if Mets land either of them at this point. I'll check Regazzo too. Thank you for that. Let's see what I'm getting tagged in, says John. From Martino's recent article. Okay, so let's read this off, guys, and then we'll go a little bit further. Again, Bob, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that as well. Furia, let me see this. To rebuild the farm and betting on prospects begin. If one or two of these kids hit, the Mets will be in on everyone next winter. Yeah, this is a big year for the Mets to see what they have in Stearns and Youngins. So not everybody, but in certain guys for sure. You're absolutely right. And this is not a rebuild year for the Mets because they're obviously going to have a competitive team on paper and they're hopefully going to push for playoffs. But this is a transitionary year in the sense that they're not having this World Series aspiration label nor talent really on paper heading into the season. Like, they're going to have to prove their worth this year for the Mets. And even though it's been an underwhelming offseason, and I'm not happy should they still not add one of those big bats out there, I still have an excitement level and still an optimism heading into the season, like I always do, of course, as a fan. And understanding the mindset, why the Mets operate the way they do. Just because I might not agree with decisions doesn't mean I don't understand. I think that's a very good thing to separate and grasp between the two. So I know I've been hopping. I've been saying I want to talk about Brooks Raley, but I was just tagged in this article. So let me read this off to you, and then we'll go from there. The Mets had an offer on the table earlier this week, according to Andy Martino, for lefty reliever Wandy Peralta for 2 years and a club option with a total guaranteed 8 to 10 mil range, according to league sources. So it appears that Peralta accepted the guaranteed $16.5 million over 4 years with 3 opt-outs from San Diego. Again, the Mets gave a good offer. It's what you're looking at, around 10 mil over 2 years. That AAV is actually higher than what he's getting right now. I think of around 4.5 for Wandy right now currently with the San Diego Padres. But Wandy opts for similar AAV but more term with San Diego. The Mets then pivoted to the pitcher that they placed on a similar value, lefty Jake Diekman. Diekman on a 1 year plus a vesting option at around the same annual value as Peralta, sources say. So there you go, guys. There is the contract details. It is not officially official, but Andy has said it himself. The Mets are adding Jake Diekman on a 1 year deal with a 2nd year vesting option, which means if Diekman either pitches a certain amount of innings this season, gets a certain amount of things right, he will then be vested and have an opportunity to pitch with the Mets in 2025, a roster that will hopefully be on paper a sexy one. So Diekman, an AAV is going to be around the same, around 4 to 5 mil per year on a 1 year with potentially a 2nd year. Sign me up. That's quite literally, we nailed it actually, guys. We literally just nailed it. Why so many ads? I'm not sure, Big Me. I do know that we have ads running during the live show, but I will tell you that the ads do actually mean a lot in regards to helping me out to keep myself afloat as a guy who does this every day. You know, so just know that the ads, while they might be tedious, you just taking a couple seconds out of your day to watch them makes a big difference, and it is a huge support here on the channel. So thank you to everyone that does go out of your way and does exactly that. So thank you for the bless you again, Drew. I appreciate that. Very, very congested and sniffly to start the day, but I like this a lot. I really do, and I'm happy that the contract is right along the lines of what I assumed it to be. The Mets noticed Diekman made a change in his delivery after a trade last season from Chicago White Sox to the Tampa Bay Rays. That is true because Diekman was a polar opposite pitcher during his time in Chicago than he was in Tampa Bay. That altercation caused him to caused him to throw more strikes and appear sustainable. If and when an agreement with Diekman becomes official, and there is optimism that it will, the Mets will have quite possibly completed their offseason work under new president of baseball operations, David Stearns. Again, just as I told you guys, that might be one of the final moves for the Mets this offseason, if not the final move. I'm obviously hoping it's not. I don't think it'll be the final move on. I think they'll probably make 1 or 2 more moves still, but I think for the bullpen for sure it's going to be done. They're also holding 10 to 15 million in reserve for the trade deadline in the event that they do on fact earn themselves a spot in the playoff race. Well, that happens. Stearns, who also spent the winter building out a culturally and intellectually, I can't speak for crap right now, I apologize, guys, diverse front office, and hiring a promising manager in Carlos Mendoza is surely realistic enough to know that even a team that has a strong process also needs a lot of luck. For now, we can simply tell you that their offseason work is just about done. Check back in 6 or 7 months for information on how they did. So here, Andy's ability to jump the gun will always never not amaze me. Here's one thing I will say. If this is the end of the Mets offseason and they add the relievers but didn't add the bat, my grade for them then, I'm pretty sure, is a C+. Because I said, and on Twitter the other day, right now I have them at a C-. They just add relievers. I give them a C+, B- range. They add a bat, then we're going to find ourselves, obviously, in that higher echelon category. I mean, C+ for just relievers. I think we're in B if they do C+ and a bat. I think we're in A if they do relievers, bat, and still add a bona fide top 3 starter. So it looks like they're going to be getting the bottom tier of those 3 I was surely hoping for. But again, that is the reality of off seasons. What we want versus reality, a lot of the cases, not the same thing. The same way that the vast majority of the players that I talked about with you guys so far this offseason have not come to the Mets. And it wasn't because of necessarily the players that we discussed being out of pocket and making no sense. A lot of them did. The Mets were connected to the vast majority of them. But the unfortunate reality is that connections, again, are not the same as like being connected to one person only means so much of say, hey, we're just giving them a call and that's it. And the issue when it's reported is a lot of times you don't know these things. You may never know these things. For all we know, again, one guy the Mets were this close to landing. I can tell you right now, the Mets were this close to landing Manuel Margot months ago, earlier in the offseason, literally months ago. They were this close, I could tell you, and it didn't happen. So there's always deals that fall through for varying reasons and things of that nature. But as things currently stand, I probably grade the Mets offseason right around a C+. Not my favorite by any stretch. It's definitely been underwhelming, but understanding their philosophy and understanding what they're trying to do, how they're operating, I understand it. I would have a much bigger gripe the Mets operate in this fashion if this was like under the Wilpons, where they basically do these moves, but don't add any depth, and then say, hey, we're going to push for playoffs next season. They say it every single year, and it's the same nonsense that they roll out for the most part. At least us fans have the understanding of what to expect this year, and that the expectation and hopefully not only the willingness, but the goal will be hit to make playoffs. But a lot of things need to fall in the lap of the Mets in the right way. A lot of things need to go in the right way. But I'm just damn excited to see what David has built and what it's going to become, because I really do think he's going to do a great job in kind of eliminating those naysayers and doubters about him, because we just started our tenure with them. We have an entire season to roll out, an entire spring training before then, just to kind of get a feel of what things are going to be like. So to be continued, obviously, on how everything's going to be going. But one thing is certain, this has been a underwhelming offseason, but this has also been an interesting one and a different dynamic, a different direction than what Steve Cohen has done the past 3 years. For the first time, finally, because of the ramifications with the tax front and also the current status of the club, this is the year for them to be operating in the manner that they will. And if you're going to have a year for kids to see what you have in them, in a Mark Vientos, a Brett Beatty, to a certain extent, Drew Gilbert, Christian Scott, Mike Vassell, all these guys, you do this in a year like this year. You don't do this in a year like 2025 when you're planning to spend more and trade more. You want to do it now to see what they have. And for all we know, some of these kids could definitely propel this team to another level. But again, we will soon find out, because at this time, your guess is as good as mine. And smelling 500 with this starting pitching staff, we'll see. That's the one thing. A lot of people are running off the team so fast. I never do that to begin with, because I think that's such a silly thing. Us Mets fans also have absolutely no right to jump the gun on these predictions, because we're the same fans that think, oh, we're 100% making playoffs after dominating the first half of the season, then having a shit second half, or having a horrendous second half and then trying to work ourselves out of it in the having a shit first half and having to work ourselves out of it in the second half. i.e. the 2019 Mets, for example, that didn't have a bullpen when Edwin Diaz first got here. He was horrendous. We all know that. Apologies, guys. Just had to blow my nose out for a second. Guys, what's the back and forth? Who's calling each other bozo and stuff? Listen. Hey, listen. I don't care if you guys love each other, hate each other. Keep it civil in the chat, all right? All right? It's not nice. let's get it together. Dominic, it's Juan, Hey Jack, all you beauties in the chat. John, you guys know the drill. Another ex-Oakland Athletic joins the Mets. Yes, George McMaster, that's correct. And you know what? This is a good Oakland A to bring on. I mean, Mark Hanna had success here. I mean, Yoenis Cespedes had success here. We're just going to forget after 2016. Jerry Blevins had success here. There are so many former Oakland A's. Everyone's favorite Jed Lowry, that I'll tell you right now, is at the fault of the Mets deciding, hey, Jed, we know you need surgery. We're not going to let you get surgery. We're going to force you into physical rehab for the next year and a half, 2 years. I don't hate Jed Lowry, unlike a lot of other fans, because I understood why he got screwed over the way he did. That became in the public eye later on after it was all happening. But, guys, I really don't think I got much more to add. The Mets have signed a reliever, one that I like, one that I think is a solid pickup for them. The walk rate is something that we're going to continue to evaluate. But before I get out of here, the final thing, and this is what I meant to do before, so I apologize for not doing it sooner, but we're going to do it now. Let's talk about the other reliever in this Mets bullpen, and his name, as a lefty at least, is in fact Brooks Raley. Now, Brooks Raley is someone who I'm a big fan of. I loved his first stint with the Mets. I really was happy with how he performed. I thought that was one of the best low-key moves that we've seen Billy Epper done as GM for the Mets. Not a lot of great moves, but Brooks Raley was certainly one of them. Let's see. Of course, I tried to load Brooks Raley's Baseball Savant page, but you know what? The computer has other plans. Let's see if we can look him up now. Hey Jack, thank you for the donation. Hey Jack says, hope everything's well. I think this team has a good chance as long as the kids hit. And this will be a big year too, not only for Beatty, Vientos, but also Francisco Alvarez in taking another step. If Alvy becomes a 30 home run guy for the Mets this year, 25, 30 plus bombs, I mean, Alvy might be, again, not that we want, let me make it clear. I want the Mets to add power protection. It pisses me off when they don't. But the Mets have guys in-house right now that can provide the power protection that we're looking for in Vientos, and to the biggest magnitude, Francisco Alvarez. If Alvarez comes out and plays, 2 out of 3 games every series, he's going to ball out. He absolutely is, and I really think he could be someone that is a huge focal point of this Mets offense throughout the entirety of the year. But now let's get into Raley here, guys. So Brooks Raley, what's fascinating about him, we just talked about Diekman's arsenal, how it's headlined by the overwhelming fastball, the sweeping slider. He has a cutter in there. He has a changeup. Now you have Raley, who's different because he's known with the sweeper he does have. Different life of the velo, though. He's known for the sinker. Not known for the four-seam fastball, but known for the sinker that sits in the 90s. Cutter, changeup, and a four-seam that, again, he really doesn't throw at all. 93rd percentile in breaking run value, 73rd percentile in off-speed run value, expected year rate, 82 percentile for Brooks Raley, 84th percentile expected batting average, 7th percentile in fastball velocity to the 75 percentile that Diekman has. So quite the contrast, and that's why I really like this pickup more with Diekman, because he is not the same as Raley. They don't profile the same whatsoever. 95th percentile in average exit velo, something both him and Diekman have in common. They're not getting hit too hard. Love that. Really do. Chase percentage, 42 percentile, much better there than Diekman. 71st percentile whip percentage, K percentage, 68 percentile, walk percentage, 20th percentile. So funny enough, Brooks Raley had his struggles with his walks and his command last year, but again, still had a pretty effective year for the Mets with a 2.8 ERA. Again, I was very happy with his outings for the most part. A hard hit percentage, a 96 percentile. No one's hard hitting this guy. Barrel percentage, 89 percentile. Again, him and Diekman both alike love to get the soft contact. Ground ball percentage, not as effective as Diekman, but just above league average at 53rd percentile and only 11th percentile in extension. So not nearly as much extension as Diekman, but as much effectiveness, if not more, than Jake Diekman in this bullpen. So again, a nice contrast. I like it a lot, and that's what I'll leave you with, guys. So the Mets have signed Jake Diekman on a one-year deal ranging around $4 to $5 million AAV with a second-year vesting option, which can be opted in most likely depending on the amount of innings that he pitches for the Mets in the 2024 season. We'll talk more about Diekman and other moves in the near future. Stay tuned. We're going to have some tremendous collabs here on the channel in the near future as we get closer to spring training. I'm very excited for them, guys. We got a lot of fun things coming and cooking here on WardyNYM. So that is what I'll leave you with. Have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your boy,